Folks, and welcome back to the Women of Water Get Real virtual summit, where we're talking about how and why women are leaking from the water career pipeline, how to stop those leaks, and how to get women back. And one of the key areas of that is providing supports for women and providing ways for women to connect with each other, which, we can do that at a conference when we get together. But there's still a lot of women who are maybe the only woman in the room or the only woman in their department. And just to have a safe space to get together is it can be really important. And we have as our guest for this session, Amanda Jones, who has done a tremendous job. In fact, I even pulled up, I hope I didn't just close it when I was telling you I was closing all those. Here we go. Has done a tremendous job creating. I'm going to show people this thing.
Okay.
This Women of Water program, however you want to call it.
Oh,
And
yay.
um she's been doing virtual masterminds and other virtual activities, and it started with sure started with COVID, and she's going to tell us more about it. So Amanda, welcome. Tell us
Hi.
what's going on with you, and tell us a little about yourself and your background and what you do in water, and then we'll get into talking about the your program.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to share my story and hopefully get some inspiration for some others to do something similar. I live in Tucson, Arizona, and I work for Tucson Water as a project manager currently. But I have been in the water industry for just under 10 years. It's the place that I want to spend my career. I have a really strong heart for altruism and I think and local government, and the best way to impact somebody is through their water and wastewater at their home. And so it's really been a way to kind of tie my government interest with the impact I want to make in my community. So I love water. I am a water professional through and through. But I found, like you were mentioning, I was the sole woman a lot of the time, and whether it was conference sessions even or in decision making around my utilities. It's changed to some degree, but I really noticed it when I first started out as a young professional and part of the young professional traditional structures. I still was pretty solitary, particularly being a non-engineer as well. I'm sort of two unique aspects that you don't see a lot. But I think that's definitely changing, which is
It's a form of
awesome.
intersectionality that we're talking
That's
about.
right.
A sense of intersectionality. So being a non-engineer is also a form of intersectionality.
Exactly. Yep. So I'm such an outgoing and like connected person. I love having a network. I had originally started my local government career in the city manager's office and had really established some roots in the city county managers association in my state. And when I moved to water, I didn't have that same connection. I just didn't know where to go. I didn't have, the right people telling me where to go. So I've sort of built it on my own. I started with a Southern Arizona water professionals group that was purely social. A lot of this stuff, I make the joke that it's selfish because I'm just trying to do it to build my own network. But I like being able to use my skills that others may not have. Like I'm aggressively friendly, I lovingly say. I also love to include people. I think I'm the person who will find the person alone and like invite them over. So I try to use those skills to find the holes that was missing in my professional career and then bring people along with me. I started this, like I mentioned, the Southern Arizona Water Professionals group that was social, that spun into a Southern Arizona Young Professionals group. And then, like everyone else during COVID, I lost a lot of that, network and connection and camaraderie building. So I started reaching out to my friends across the country and heard the same thing. I miss connections, I miss my networks, I miss, doing whatever. And the idea to start Women in Water came in December of 2019. So at a lunch right before the pandemic. So we had one in-person meeting in Southern Arizona, in Tucson specifically, where we got some buy-in, people had some interest, and then I started hosting almost everything online. And last year or so, maybe 6 months.
Started it online before COVID. It wasn't just something that,
Yeah.
hey, we're all online anyway, so let's do it online.
Yeah, I think it spun up from COVID though, for sure. I mean, it was intended that it was likely just going to be, this group of 20 to 30 women in Southern Arizona. And because of the network that I had built and connections of connections, we have over 120 members all across the country. And that's strictly because we have been able to host a lot of our events online. It was important to me, like I mentioned, to be inclusive, that I continue to host events online so that our membership can participate outside of Arizona. In the last 6 months or so, we started to have some in-person stuff, which is just a nice addition. My offerings are going to be online forever, and the in-person is sort of a nice supplement to that building. And we use the inclusive language of an X, so it's WOMXN. Because we are a group that welcomes anyone who identifies as a woman in the water industry. So that was important to me as well as we were starting out, is like you mentioned, that intersectionality. I want to ensure that everyone feels that they have a place to join in our network and feel recognized that they're a part of our group.
Yeah. And that is important. And that's actually, as we built at this program, which now probably about 50 women, we ensured that we had Black women, we had Hispanic women, and we were also, I didn't think I was going to get any, was trying to get lesbian or bi women, and really couldn't find anyone willing to speak. And had been asking a trans man who is now on the board at AZWater. And so he's now going to be, Ari, so he's now going to be speaking. And then one of the people that had also signed up, I didn't realize until we started talking that she's also queer. So we do have some of that. So now we have 50 amazing women and one trans man.
Yeah.
Man. But and that's going to be a very interesting, I think, perspective there as someone who's experienced both sides, right?
Yeah, and Ari has written a blog for us as well, because it was an important intersectionality that I wanted to highlight as part of our everything we do almost exclusively is user content driven. So all the blog posts are written by members. Most of our discussion is led by members. It's really important to me that this group is a place where they feel welcome, and they feel like they can build that network. So we very infrequently talk about work-related things. No one mentions membranes or, what PFAS. We don't talk about that stuff. We talk about, changing jobs, or how to have a difficult conversation, or who can I reach out to if, I'm having this experience in my office. We very infrequently do sort of, negative type discussions, not in a positive toxicity kind of way, but in just like we're trying to lift each other up, and we talk about difficult things, but not in a way that's gripey or, just kind of venting sessions.
Yeah, and that's what we've tried to do with this summit. It's not a bitch fest. It's it's about getting real. It's about not glossing things over with celebrations and success stories. And let's not say anything that might upset anyone, right? Sure. We can't. We're problem solvers. We can't solve problems if we don't talk about what those problems are. But it's funny. It was. Before we started recording, I mentioned the training that I had done with a gentleman who's actually going to be in Phoenix for this Mastermind Millions conference that he has coming up. Of training specifically around the kind of format that you're offering, of really bringing people together and holding space. And, as a planner, I could relate to that, because that's what we would do. We would bring in, cities and farmers and environmental, companies or nonprofits and oil companies, and have them singing Kumbaya and everything. And it's a process, and it takes, building relationships, building trust, building community, and not every good at that.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it looks, as just, okay, let's get a bunch of people in a Zoom room and get
Totally.
everyone talking about, whatever. Right.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of thought about how I ask questions. I think I am not alone in my experience, and so I know that the others on the calls, and as we've gotten closer as a group, you feel a little bit more comfortable. But I know that I'm not alone in the things that I'm feeling and the things that I'm interested in learning more about. So when we put together professional webinars, like our first one in November of 2021 was on human resiliency. And it was in the point of the pandemic where, I hadn't left my house in months and hadn't seen my friends in real life. And so I pull a lot of our content from things that I'm living through and my lived experience, because the feedback I get is, oh yeah, that's absolutely something that I didn't think of, or I definitely had that experience. I didn't know how to put it in the right words. And
Yeah.
one of my favorite stories is our second webinar was about addressing fear and imposter syndrome. And a friend of mine at the time hadn't told her office she was pregnant. She was afraid to tell them. So she attended the webinar. She texted me after and she's like, I just want to let you know that gave me the support and the drive I need to not be afraid to share this exciting thing in my life with the people in my office. So that's why I do what I do, is for those folks that are important to me and to our industry and our communities, so that they feel empowered to do the things that are exciting to them, that are important to them, and trying to help people understand that she was afraid to say that. Why was she afraid to say that? Let's talk about that and see how the next person isn't afraid. So we really try to do a lot of lifting up. We're all here together just trying to make it through, and life's hard. So why not have a group of people who help make it a little easier?
Have you personally done much in the way of personal development and kind of learned some of that in your own journey? I know, especially that part of the country. I mean, I started personal development in Canada, of all places, after separating from a large firm. But I know a lot of people in the water space, there is that, especially when we hit those difficult times in life, it can be a nice time to, go into some sort of a transformational program and have that support.
Yeah, I've not done anything formal, training sessions or, conferences or things like that around personal development. I am lucky and grateful. I have an incredible group of mentors in my life who are willing to have difficult conversations, who are willing to listen when I'm struggling with something. So while it's not a formal process, I definitely have a network of people that I greatly respect, who I can call and reach out to and talk about, any of the kind of things I'm experiencing. I think I was in my previous job for 8 years or so, and it was time to make a change. And that was a really hard thing to come to terms with. I was really good at my job. I really liked my job. It just was time to make a change. And I needed that network that I've built through Women in Water to help me kind of figure out the right way to move through that, and the right mindset to have in that too. Like it's okay to grow out of a position. And no one had ever said that to me before. So I think I'm really grateful for them. And I hope that others in Women in Water find those same connections that I did.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. Again, I'm going to say in terms of as a facilitator, I have tremendous respect for your skills as a facilitator. I really noticed that you knew what you're doing, and I think there are people who thought, when we went online, there were people who were like, oh, all I have to do is learn like the ratio for the screen for my Zoom slides and, write PowerPoint slides on Zoom. And, how do I turn it on? Okay, now I'm going to hold a meeting. And there is something to bring people together. And it is a little different too, when you have people together in a Zoom room versus having them together, at the back room at a coffee shop or something.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I attribute a lot of that to growing up being a singer on stage. There's a lot of vulnerability that comes with putting yourself out there, and that's what I bring every time we have these sessions. If I can't show vulnerability to this group, how can I ask them to be vulnerable with me? So I make mistakes. I swear quite a bit. I, fumble through things. But I'm human, and I think that that's part of our gem, I think, is that we are all human. We share our humanity with each other. Common humanity is what gets me through every day. And, I think, so that's the first piece, is that I just am blatantly vulnerable to these groups of women. And it's because they make me feel safe too. And I think that's a true credit to our membership. The other is I really, like I said before, love to include people. So, if somebody feels like they may not have the opportunity, I will make the space for them. So, if there's a lull in the conversation, I'll call on somebody. And I also always try to provide the no pressure. If you just want to, would you like to chime in? No? Cool. Okay. Right. It's a super easy, I think, space to be a part of, but I work really hard to make it feel like that. So thanks for noticing. I sometimes feel like
it's funny. I'm in the middle of that right now. So at the time we're recording this, I've just got, I haven't even gotten a final count, because I've got my, 3 different admin assistants in different time zones. It's like, will somebody please give me the final number of where we're at? But it's, I keep thinking, well, we really should have someone to speak about this, and really, someone to speak about, mental health and suicide rates among people who become waterpreneurs, right? Because entrepreneurship can be so hard, and especially in the public space, and it takes a lot longer, and they want to, they're not just in it for the money, they want to save the world. And if you haven't been there, you haven't been there, right? And so,
Sure.
I keep thinking of these people say, I should have this person, I should have this person. And that's why they've ended up with so many speakers. But then we can, as we open this up for registration, and, people can come to us from all over the world. And one of the beautiful things about a summit is that each and every speaker has their own network. And, I've got a retired, the woman, Marcia St. Martin, who was head of New Orleans Water and Sewer Board during Katrina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Amazing woman. But she's like, oh, well, I'm not on social media. I don't really have a network. It's like, even if you just send it to your friends, email, send them an announcement. Hey, here's, this is this really cool event. Come sign up. If every one of the 50 people does that, and everyone gets a few people to sign up, suddenly we got a group that one person alone would never be able to get. Right. That's the power of community.
Yeah. Yep, totally. And that's, I think, kind of the vision for what what I'm doing. We have quite a few members in the Boston area. And one of the conversations we had was have them meet in person potentially. I don't think it happened, but as we grow, we have a lot of membership in Phoenix, obviously in Tucson, where I am. But that, I think, would be kind of my goal eventually, is we have these sort of small pockets that all have the same drive, the same, sort of structure around how their meetings are held, and really intentionally building networks. There's happy hours and things like that, like I was at an event last night that had another event at it. And you go and you got your sticky name tag and your drink, and you're like trying to meet people, but it's not the same. That's performative. You're not welcomed in a lot of the time. You have to reach out to be participating in those kinds of things. And I think what we've really found,
we all know each other for years, and you're just kind of standing there.
Sure. Yeah. And we invite people, right? A lot of people have word of mouth, but I invite a lot of folks to participate, or someone will hear about it and we'll send them my way. And I always try to, we're here for you. Make sure you attend our next thing, and one of my goals for 2023 we're in now is to expand what we offer. So not everybody can attend our, Women Crushing Wednesday social events in the morning. So we did a book club, this last 6 months or so. So we'll try that again. We have some, formal webinars, like I mentioned. We'll have more of those throughout the year. So trying to expand our offerings So people don't feel like they're not included if they can't attend, our Wednesday mornings, which are pretty standard traditional, like, let's just chat about earrings or whatever we're going to talk about that week.
And you did a really good job on your International Women's Day, by the way. And
Oh,
that was a
thank
really, it was a
you.
really nice session. Having when I did the personal development work and everything, that they would end with sort of a longer term small group, okay, now that you've figured out how you want to change your life or whatever, now you're going to get support over the next 3 months to do that, right? And that kind of morphed into the school focusing on masterminds, which is a term sometimes used for the kind of session that you bring together, right? There's these kind of peer mentoring, right? It's not coaching. It's not Amanda sitting there doing all the talking and then she's telling everybody else what to do and all that. It's a collaborative effort. And so I started doing that for women water leaders, because I had started reaching out to women water leaders, and especially after Harvey Weinstein and the Me Too stuff. You started seeing women in water groups forming. They didn't always last very long. Usually it'd be like one person like, yeah, we're gonna do this, or a few people, and then they move away or something, and they just kind of fizzle out. And of course the associations definitely wanted to have them after Me Too. But it was usually where there was a critical mass,
Sure.
a major population center, right? So Phoenix, Tucson area, San Diego, LA. I think DC might have had something for a little while that fizzled out, and Illinois has theirs. But then I started doing them virtually, and this is pre-COVID, way pre-COVID, and just put it out there. Hey, we're going to do this, and I have it structured. We have everyone go around the circle for a 2-word check-in. We'd have and we'd have here's how you sign up for the hot seat, and here's what go ahead and write out your problem, and and what kind of support you're looking for, and all that, and we were getting some really deep stuff was coming up, and it was usually Gen X like me, and occasionally a baby boomer woman or two. But we usually weren't getting the younger women. They were like, we're on top of the world, women changing the world. Go GRRRL girls. And then suddenly, at the start of the pandemic, all these millennial women started showing up. And I don't know if it was because the older millennials are starting to turn 40, right? They're getting that point where it's like, wait a minute, where's my career going now?
Could be.
But that was something that really, and when I started hearing some of the women having some of the same issues that I was having, or women who found out that, their boss really didn't want to promote them, that they were kind of strung them along for years. And it's like, well, he's out there with all the clients and she's doing all the scut work back in the office.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I think we've seen a lot of diverse members. We've got all the different kinds of backgrounds, all different kinds of careers, all different ages, groups, and have still been able to find that, that common humanity and that vulnerability with one another. I think we keep our discussions light, not in a derogatory sense, but in a way that's how, in my opinion, that's how you build relationships. I find it's more of a connector if I know that we have similar interests or TV shows we've watched in common, and like that's how you start the relationships. And so that's a lot of what we talk about from that light perspective. And then once you build the relationship, then you can invite others in and say, hey, look, this group's really great. We talked about blah, 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 blah. And then you also have that. And then the secondary piece is that you can have those difficult conversations where appropriate. We had a discussion a few weeks ago that I'm not even sure what our topic for the week was, but we ended up talking about mother-daughter relationships and how one of our members was just really struggling to not bring some of the toxic experiences she had with her mother to her daughter. And, I'm not a mother, but I am a daughter. And so I can share my experience. And we had other mothers on the call who could share their experience with her. And I never anticipated having those kinds of discussions. I thought we were going to talk about podcasts. So I'm really grateful for our members being willing to have those discussions. And I do think it comes from having that diverse group. I'm a millennial, not quite 40, but on my way. And one of the biggest tenets of my life is representation matters. And so if they see a millennial leading their group, if they see a mother on the panel talking or on the call talking about their experience, if they see a hardcore career professional talking about their experience, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just that representation is what I'm really trying to spend some time and focus on. So if we get into a conversation like that, I'm the first to continue it. And, I try to keep it out of that sort of negative, nasty space. But it's worth having, the discussion of this is what's on my mind right now. And this is a group I feel like I can share that with. And I want that to be available for whomever is interested. And that's why I keep doing what I'm doing.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, again, that is a sign of good facilitation. And the same is true for public meetings or outreach meetings or planning meetings of kind of pushing them off into conversation. And if it starts to veer into something that is, going to be distracting from the purpose of the group, zoom back into, something that's a little more constructive, right?
Totally.
And if a nudge doesn't work, sometimes a 2x4, yeah.
Yeah. And having the space to share your lived experience. We all have different ones. And so I think that's a message I try to repeat. My lived experience is different than yours, is different than my neighbors, and all have value and all have things we can learn from one another. So, representation matters because our lived experiences are different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very cool. Very cool. And, one of the things I really liked about doing it online, again, pre-COVID, is that we were attracting women, and I have my network and I've got a lot of connections in LinkedIn and everything is all the women who are not in those population centers, in Idaho, in Vermont, and, Hawaii, right? Or they're in a particular industry. They're working in oil sands or something that's a little less than in water utilities, so to remember that even when there has been a lot of push to have more diversity, and you often get a bunch of women about the same age, coming in from school, and millennials especially. If you're at a larger organization, you might have a larger number of women, maybe not in the same room in every meeting, but they're around, right? Sure. In smaller firms, the little family mom and pop, tank yank kind of environmental consulting firms or whatever, in smaller labs, and in rural areas, it's more likely that, in small utilities as well, right? It's more likely that you might end up in a situation where you're just around men all day, which for me, honestly, I grew up basically raised to believe that the cool stuff was the stuff that the guys were doing, and I needed to be one of the boys. And I was one of my dad sued our hometown right after Title IX. Yes, I'm dating myself here, to get me onto the boys soccer team, because he tried to sign up my little brother for soccer. And then he was like, I should get he knew that I wasn't going to be Nadia Comaneci. I was doing gymnastics like every other little girl in the 70s. And so he was going to sign me up for soccer, and I wasn't allowed. So he sat me down and got me on the, I was the only girl on the boys team, and I was really comfortable with the guys.
Yeah.
There's something about the way guys, we talk a lot about toxic masculinity and all that stuff, but there's something very positive
Hmm.
about the way guys can come together as a team, even with other guys that they might not be best friends with off the team, but they all come together and they work towards that mission. They work to get a goal. They work to win the
Yeah.
game. They work to, you know, they form a team. And when I started playing on women's teams, it wasn't always like that. And there were the
Interesting.
cliques and there was the this and the,
Sure.
and that's in the office too, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the water industry is very similar to how you described your boys team, right? We're all working together. We're all moving in the same direction. We all want to do the right things regardless of where we come from, if we know each other, if we don't, if that's the thing that holds us together. The ties that bind is wanting to ensure, clean water and proper sanitation. Um,
That's one of the
especially
reasons I
at
liked it. Was this team, even with the women and the men, sometimes with some of the like the admin staff or something like that, who might say, "Oh, well, I don't want to support a woman engineer,
mm,
because my career is tied to who I work with, right?" Or
sure.
I've actually had people tell me the reason they were a secretary for a engineering firm instead of a real estate company, or they wanted to marry an engineer.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, that's a
Work with
reason.
a woman engineer. Um, that's changing too,
Yeah,
because
for
there are
sure.
more women, right? You
Well,
can't pick.
and I think we live this all the time is we live in a society that's the expectation, I think, and I don't feel that change has happened to the degree that I would like to see it. We live in I think there's a lot of our societal norms are
Mm.
stemming from patriarchy, and everyone knows that. That's not novel. I didn't come up with that. But it's the silly, that we talk about microaggressions, or we talk about things in our communities that are created with patriarchy at their base, at their foundation, right? Like seatbelts.
Right.
Seatbelts are designed for men. The heating and cooling systems, when they were tested in the original, whenever they were, created, were designed for men. So like
Right.
men wearing a sport coat is the level of how cold a office should be, right? Like these things are ingrained in our society, and we don't see them unless somebody is like, hey, my seatbelt doesn't fit, or I'm freezing all the time. um,
Right.
and I think it's getting better. It's not the place that I would like it to be, but I shout from the rooftops a lot of how, you know, even the like Disney princess of it all, that's changing too. We had this, I grew up with, you know, the damsel in distress and Beauty and the Beast, and then she gets saved, and da, 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 da. I'm like, that's what, I was supposed to do. I was supposed to do. Um, and
My prince will come.
right. And I'm my own prince, right? Like I can handle my side. I'm a independent. I stand alone. I am confident in my abilities. I'm confident in who I am as a person. I love being around others, but I am truly comfortable with myself. And that's taken a long time, and networks of people like this one to get to. And that's something I think we can do better at as a whole, whether it's our professional environment generally, water sector generally, is just understanding that these things are occurring and they may not be intentional, but they exist. I think the other thing, we were just talking about this at the Diversity and Membership Inclusion Committee for AWWA, is we don't think about the things we don't know, right? Of course.
Mm.
But I try to do, I'm like the reminder, hey, what about this? So I have type 1 diabetes. I've had it for over 10 years. And something that I talk about a lot is potluck. So it takes me longer to eat my lunch, right? I have to do the carb calculation. I have to test my blood sugar. I have to give my shot. I have to worry about if others are going to be upset that I'm giving myself a shot, or if they see blood or whatever. It's a lot of burden on me, which is fine. This is how I live. But potlucks always have cookies, bread, sandwiches. And the worst of it all is there's never anything to drink if you're not drinking sugar. So you either drink bottled water, which I don't do as a water professional if I can help it, or it's sugary drinks. So these are things that you don't think of. They're not malintended, but it's something that I'm like, hey, maybe have a diet next time, or like, can we have sparkling water next time? And it's just those kinds of things that, I know this is a total tangent from what we were talking about, but it's stuff that
Oh,
we
no,
don't
it's
think
totally, yeah.
about, and we don't do a good job about taking a pause prior to doing things. I'm guilty of it too, but I'm trying really hard to think about how I engage with people.
Well, and honestly, when when planning and organizing and facilitating an event, especially once you get beyond kind of the mastermind level, that experience that you are creating is everything all the way through.
Right.
So if you go to a really well thought out
inclusive
transformational
event.
personal development event, then they will the lighting and the heat, and air conditioning, the seating arrangements. When
Right.
you go out for lunch, it's probably not going to be white bread sandwiches and ham and soda pop. It'll be healthy foods. It'll be salads. It'll be quinoa. It'll be
Options for
vegetarian. It'll
people.
be protein. It'll what's going to sustain you through the next part of the day.
Right.
And when you hold that space, that is a part of doing that. And it's very much a part of it as well when we do public meetings. If you want to attract if you want people from within your community, if you want communities of color, if you want low income, you don't have it in the middle of the day.
Right.
If it is in the evening, you might want to serve something to eat, because they probably haven't, they're not going to have a chance to stop and grab dinner.
Or have it in the morning because they're shift
or
work,
have it first thing in the morning.
Like, there's all kinds of things that we can
have
do.
Some coffee there. Yeah. What can you do to enhance the experience so that you get, so you get good, good, that people know, like, and trust you, and
Totally.
you get a good vibe out of it.
Yeah. And that's how you provide inclusion, right? I think we spend a lot of time talking about diversity from an age, sex, gender, sometimes sexual orientation perspective, but we very infrequently are talking about it from a medical perspective. In my instance, my little brother is deaf, and we've signed his entire life. He's younger, obviously. And something that I took for granted that I didn't cross my mind is he reads lips. And when he's out in the community with folks that don't sign. And when we started wearing masks, he was so isolated that he couldn't leave his house. And so I think about that a lot. I think about, how am I isolating somebody? And so we got these silly masks. They feel silly. They're not silly, but they have like a little window. And so
exactly. Yeah,
he can
like
still read our lips.
Yes.
Right. He can still read lips. And if you don't sign, he can, and it's the same experience that I was mentioning before. The burden is always on the person rather than putting the burden on the organization or the entity putting something on to make them feel welcome. It's creating a welcome environment. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is making sure we have that critical awareness, thinking about what might be different. Should we think about closed captioning our keynote sessions? I've never seen it at a water conference, not ever. Maybe they have printed transcripts someplace. These are things that are easy, in my opinion, to incorporate. They just need the reminder to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we are missing people who are visually impaired. Maybe we're missing people who are neurodivergent. Maybe they need a space that's quiet, because conferences are overwhelming. Everyone knows that. Maybe you need a space that's quiet. So I spend a lot of time in my conversations about equity talking about those other kinds of inclusion, because I hate seeing anybody feel alone, isolated, standing by themselves. That breaks my heart.
There have been some really cool developments in terms of course, with the Super Bowl and just developments in how people are learning how to be interpreters for sign language. That it is, so much about not just getting the words done, but the expression. And I noticed that really the first time early in COVID, the guy who was the translator for Governor Cuomo in New York City when he was putting out daily updates on the death rates and what do we know and everything. And they had some, the guy in a little corner, and they blew it up so that people could see. And outside New York City, folks, this guy was signing with a New York accent.
I'm sure. Totally. Yeah.
It's like, wow, that is a New Yorker signing in a New York accent. He's mimicking, and he actually, I've read some articles about it, how he was learning to take on the expressiveness of Governor Cuomo.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that has become much more, you're not just learning the words, you're learning the expression. Right.
Exactly. And that's how you relate. You don't relate to somebody who speaks in a monotone voice and doesn't change their inflection at all. That's not memorable. But watching that girl sign Rihanna,
blah blah blah, French language. No, it's like you got to get the intentions.
Right. I think what's been really cool is to watch the hype and the spotlight that was put on the interpreter for Rihanna's halftime show. I mean, she was killing it out there. I couldn't do that, and she was just, I think that the more representation matters. The more you see it, the more you'll think about it again. And, hopefully at some point, it'll just trigger, right? It doesn't need to be an active in your face. It can absolutely be a passive experience. So I use, in all my presentations, I have a QR code on all my slides that sends me a text message if you want to ask me a question. If you don't want to raise your hand in a group of 50 people and you still want to ask your question, send a screenshot or take a picture of that QR code and it'll text me. So we include all these people. I always use a microphone, regardless of how loud I speak, because it helps people who might not be able to hear as well. So I try to lead by example. And those are two experiences that I have really, really incorporated a lot in my state section and will continue to do as we go. Because it doesn't need to be in your face. You're not being inclusive. No one's going to respond to that. But somebody will see, oh, that QR code thing was really smart. I'm gonna do that on my next presentation or whatever the thing might be.
What we tried to bring in when everyone went virtual, and because we started in 2012 Water Citizen, this idea as a planner that you put so much time and effort into an event, and then if it snows that day or somebody's kid gets sick or whatever, you're not in the room where it happens. You're not in the room where it happens. But if we could start doing some of these things online and not just blasting eyeballs, but having a safe space. And folks, this is part of what we're trying to do with this summit. And even though this is a pre-recorded session, we'd love to have you type your thoughts. What are you thinking about things that Amanda's saying? What have you experienced? She can go in and she's going to be able to see that page. She's going to be able to see that chat and respond. And you actually can have a conversation. For those of you who decide to do the empowerment package and get all access to all of the recordings. You could even be part of we're starting to test a new platform, this Mighty Networks thing that is more interactive, kind of like Facebook, but without, them taking all your personal material and turning it into advertising stuff.
Perfect. That sounds great.
We don't want to do Facebook. So it's like, we're going to give this a shot. But I wonder, I really studied all of the conferences that went virtual. In fact, we did in Water Citizen News. If you look at #WaterGoesVirtual, it should pop up the stuff that we did in Water Citizen News. And we looked at water reuse in AWWA and WEFTEC, their first virtual. And each one had a little different approach. Some of them, it was basically, they would get these platforms that looked like a conference center, but it was really just a Zoom call and you're just watching a webinar, right? With something that around it that looks like a conference, maybe curtains or something. Or you go out in the break and you have your little avatar and you kind of walk around from table to table and you go bump into the table and then it's up to this little Zoom call with the other people at the table. Then you leave the other people, But there's that, or in some cases, all the focus was on the sponsors, right? There was no interaction at all you couldn't even ask questions during the sessions, or if you asked questions, then the staff would kind of reinterpret the question and read it their way. And then most of the time is spent, sending you out to the booths for the different exhibitors, right? And I understand that's a big part of how they make their money, or keep revenue so that they can keep the lights on. But I think so many of them have, like, as soon as COVID started to lift, the COVID constraints lifted, they dropped virtual like a hot rock, right?
Yeah.
And they just didn't even want to do it anymore. And I think what we've seen, with groups like Women in Water and Women Crushing Wednesdays, is you can really have powerful experiences in the virtual space.
I think that's true. I think it's a space. I absolutely agree with you. I think there's a balance somewhere in between. I think the hot rock example is the knee-jerk reaction to not having in-person experiences. And then I think as you kind of course correct, as we get back to quote unquote normal, as we course correct, they're gonna see declines, because people, to your point, are gonna be sick or can't get there, or travel, whatever. So I think there will be a balance kind of in between. I think if you want to be successful long term, you have to have both. I'm not gonna ask somebody from Boston to fly to Tucson to come to an event unless it's a very specific thing once a year. It's really challenging. And if you want to include people and you want to have a diverse group that participates in your discussions, you're going to have both.
Yeah. Well, and it's the most successful online coaching, transformational educational programs out there. They start out online. Right. They might have a free group, and then they go into like a 8-week course or something, and you really get to know each other, and you have the live sessions, but you also have a Facebook group or some other, community group where you get to know all the other people who are going through the class with you. And then at the end, it's like, okay, now we're all going to get together in Tucson, Arizona. And we're, but by then you already met everyone.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the very first time I went to an event like that, it was like, oh my God, the hugs are at the beginning of the event and not the end.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, we've been chatting all for 6 months online, and now we get to meet each other in person. And that's a peak experience. Right?
Totally. We had that. So I was fortunate enough to be part of the Duke University Water Innovation Leadership Development Program. I was a part of the first cohort, which was the middle of Delta. I mean, we were planning to go in person to meet each other for the first time and couldn't. So our entire experience, except for our graduation weekend, was online. So the way the program works is at the end of one cohort, they also have the beginning of the next cohort. So when we were all able to go meet each other in person in February of 2022, the new cohort was just meeting each other. And the comments we all got were, this is the first time you're meeting each other? Because we were, there's 15 of us connected as a group, moved as a horde, laughed together, were friendly together. Like, it was just exactly what you described. I can't tell you the number of people who came up to me and were like, you guys have never met in person? And it's because we had these online relationships for a year in advance of meeting. And those people are a part of my network. They're part of my friends. They are people that I will always reach out to and talk to. But it wouldn't have happened if we hadn't have had both relationships. And so, I think the second cohort had a different experience. They met each other, then they went online, then they saw each other again. So I would be curious to see. And they're just as friendly, just in a different way. So it was just a really interesting sort of microcosm of what you're describing of, no, I've never met this person in real life, but we had happy hours in our year-long process. We had online classes in our year-long process. But we're all so stoked to get together in February that now we have discussions about when we're meeting again, and when are we having our reunions and all those kinds of things.
Right. How can you plan it on the tail end of a ACE or WEFTEC or
exactly.
something?
Yeah.
Right. because you want to have that balance, that back and forth. And right, I'd actually been looking into a position with this new building that's been built on Capitol Hill, or near Capitol Hill, by Xylem built the Reservoir Center. It's a gorgeous building, but they're still trying to figure out how to get people into the building and use it on a regular basis, and hanging out there and having community and everything. And I'm trying to explain it. It's like, yeah, you've got a great space for meetings, but you can also do an online community so that people will stay connected in between the time they get together, because that will get them to show up more than if they only see each other when they actually show up. Right. And I said, no, we have a building. We're going to have people in the building. Well, we're not online. We have people in this. Like,
yeah, right.
Okay.
Well, and I think you end up having to use so much. I find I use my energy so differently now. If I have an online meeting, I don't have to, I don't, pump up's not the right word, but get as jazzed for it, right? Like, I can turn my computer on. It takes 5 minutes. I can, get ready, have my headphones, start my discussion. But if I'm going to an in-person meeting, there's a lot more energy you expend in an in-person event, that I'm the type of person that either needs to come down from that. And so I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this thing on Friday night and Saturday I'm staying home, Right. So I think there's a lot of that kind of goes to the wayside when you're talking about having only in-person meetings. I don't think I'm alone in that battery recharge space. I do think there's people who can just, Energizer Bunny their way through all kinds of events. But I think there's a lot to be said of how we use our energy efficiently by having both options.
And we actually have more of that in the water space. We've had some discussions with people like Beverly Marshall, and who else we talked to about this? A few people have talked about neurodiversity, and and just being introverted. And a lot of people are drawn to these STEM-based fields because they're a little more comfortable, spending hours in front of the computer and in the lab or whatever, and not getting at, if they want to be around people all the time, they're marketing majors and they go become salesmen. They're not going to be, or business majors, whatever, and they're not going to be seeking out these quieter places, right?
Sure.
And so,
I think that's our job, to empower those people to be in their space, and encourage that you can do this. It is something that is in your tool belt to give a presentation or to lead a discussion or whatever those things are. I think that us as extroverts owe it to our introverted friends to kind of push them a little bit, to say, this is something that'll be really valuable to you. I think you'll be really glad you did it. I will support you in doing it. I always get a little pushback. I'm like, I just don't like talking in front of people, and no one does. I mean, no one loves, I love a microphone. That's that's the truth. But I think everyone's nervous, and if you're not nervous, you don't care, and that's the truth. I think I get nervous all the time. I mean, I've done since I was 9 years old, and I still get butterflies getting up on a stage. I mean, if you don't have that, you're not in the right place. And I do think, to my original point, I think we really need to encourage our introverted friends. I have a friend who tells a joke all the time of, how can you tell the extroverted engineer he's looking at the other person's shoes? And I was like, oh no, that's terrible. Is that true?
That's my favorites.
Yeah. So it's just, I think, again, I find, and sometimes it's too aggressive, and I'll be, I will be the first to be like, oh, I was too much for that person, and I need to, I can't interact with them the way that I interact with Kat. I need to interact with them in a different way. And one of the best compliments I ever got is someone told me that I can talk to anyone about anything. And I think that was really thoughtful of a comment, and I resonated with that so much, and it felt really nice to hear that, because I do try to, I don't know if code switch is the right word, but I do try to meet people where they are. And some people are really gregarious and love chatting and want to be loud and cheers the drinks and have the shots or whatever the things might be, and others just want to sit quietly and have some food, and that's okay too.
Yeah, and just read the room and meet the person, and even within the fields, like I would be able to talk geology with the geologists,
Right.
and engineer with the engineering, and they don't speak the same language, right? And the biologists are different too, and the wildlife ecologists are different from the public health people, and and so to really, we think about those aspects of diversity as well, and that
Mm-hmm.
how is it? It's just that whole. It's not counting the beans. It's not checking off the boxes of, okay, we got X number of this color and X number of that gender, whatever.
Right.
It's, are we creating a space that really supports everyone and allows them to thrive? And I think
That's
that's
right.
that's really been the bottom line for this event, is um this idea that if you talk to one woman, you've talked to one woman. And
That's
that's why
true.
we talked to 50.
That's right.
That not everyone has kids at the same time, not everyone has the same relationship status, or not everyone can't travel because they have kids, or they're someday gonna have kids, and therefore you should just mommy track them just in case they someday have kids because they have a uterus.
Right. Right.
Whether it's working or not, you don't know. But he said, oh well, women don't like to travel, or women don't like to this, or women are going to be taking care, women are going to
Right.
all get breast cancer or whatever. And it's just like, no, you need to just stop reading, Business Insider and Forbes on your LinkedIn in the morning, and then assume that you know everything you need to know about women in the workplace.
Sure. Totally. Right. Like like I said, everyone's lived experience is different. I love your point of, if you talk to one woman, you talk to one woman. But I think there's what makes our group, and I think our group specifically, Women in Water specifically, like in the general sense, but also water utility professionals, is we just are all, there is a thread line. So even if you're not, like to your point, you're talking to a geologist, you're talking to a hydrologist, you're talking to an engineer, you're talking to a PR person, we all care about the same things, and it will get us to where, you can have that common ground and some common humanity. And if not, ask them what they're watching on Netflix, and that usually will, get into a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I hope that people will take advantage of the offerings that you have. And do you want to just kind of give the website, and we'll put it on the page where you're watching this video. You'll see the links for Women in Water, and your women water crushing Wednesday, your Women Crushing Wednesdays.
Yep.
This get together that's twice a month, right?
Yeah, so you can find us at womeninwater.org. So it's WOMXN, just as a reminder. So we have our website, and there's a sign up on that home page that'll get you on our listserv. Then that will get you all the reminders for our events throughout the year. And our staple event is our Women Crushing Wednesdays, which is the second and fourth Wednesday of every month. It's at 8:30 Arizona time, I'm going to say, because time zones are a mystery to me.
Whether it's daylight savings or not. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's 8:30 Arizona time. And we talk about, it's purely an event or a function to build that network. So like I mentioned, we don't talk about work. We don't talk about tech things. We talk about things that are fun. No PowerPoints, never. We play fun games. The last time our last event coincided with International Women's Day, so that was some serendipitous timing for us, and so we had a big
the
women
winner
empower.
Of your game.
Yeah,
the winners of your games, we gave them empowerment packets. So they're going to get lifetime access to all the videos in our summit, and an opportunity to be part of the to come for the little post party in the membership group. So
awesome. Yeah, it was a lovely time. So glad to have you there. So grateful for your generosity for those winners, and just looking forward to getting to know people. We also have a LinkedIn page that's the same, Women in Water with the X. So if that's the way you'd like to engage as well, you're there. And then we're also running for the month of March, for Women's History Month, we run a feminine products drive. Our intention is to end period poverty. 1 in 4 women misses out on participating in their communities in the United States due to inaccess to period products. And in 26 states, period products are taxed as luxury items. So we want to ensure that our fellow women across the country have access to affordable period products, and we collect them throughout the month of March. Our website also has the links where you can donate, where you can participate, where you can encourage your friends to donate. So I hope that we can collect more than we did last year is the goal. So I appreciate your time. Right. Thank you so much for having me, and what a fun conversation.
Oh, it was awesome, and I'm excited to introduce more women to your incredible program. You've done a great job with that, and hopefully you get over to Mastermind of Millions, which happens to be coming to Arizona, and add some more bells and whistles and just like deeper ways of doing all that. So, if you happen to be watching this before that happens, it's the 23rd to 26th in Phoenix. I'll put that in the link as well. But yeah, I mean, all the things that we talked about, how do you hold space, create space, create an environment that really includes as many people as possible. And that's so critical because, we have some big challenges we're facing in the water space. We got climate change, aging infrastructure, droughts, floods, hurricanes, cats and dogs living together. We need people who know what they're doing. And when we have people who put in the commitment, who get the education, get the experience to work in water, we want to make sure that they feel welcome and are included. So Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amanda Jones, for being here with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
And thank you, everyone who's watching. Please type your experiences in the chat. Share what you like. Amanda will be able to get back to you. My team will be able to get back to you. Check out the links and keep watching for more.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us for this extraordinary conversation, one of 45 extraordinary conversations we had as part of the Women of Water Get Real virtual summit, where we explored where and why women are leaking from the water career pipeline, how we can stop those leaks, and even bring women back to water. I hope that you will enjoy all of these amazing interviews. If you don't have a chance to watch all of them during the summit, you have the opportunity to join us with a power pack and get lifetime access to all the videos, as well as an opportunity to join us for 30 days in a brand new community where we will dig even deeper in live facilitated conversations about some of the issues that are facing women in water. Look forward to seeing you there. Please join us at watercitizen.org/women, watercitizen.org/women for more information. See you again soon.